Hello and welcome to Codified Lounge. My name is Gaurang and I hope you all are doing great. Today we are going to talk about CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Learning CSS will allow us to convert our boring HTML page into this exciting, interactive, animating web page. And so I'm super duper excited about this video. I hope you all are too. And for anyone new to this channel, this video is part of this web development fundamental series where we introduce web development for beginners. And if you want to check out other videos of this series, the playlist link is in the description. I hope you like it. And without any further delays, let's get started. So, just some theory before we get our hands dirty with CSS. First of all, what is CSS, right? It stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Basically, it's a language we use to style our HTML document, right? So if you remember in HTML introduction, we created all these elements. We created text input, we created paragraph, we created lists. So there we were telling the browser that, hey, these are the elements to render for this page. But now we are telling the browser on how they should be rendered. What should be width of our text field, or what should be the background color of our paragraph, or how should you show the bullets in our unordered list or ordered lists, right? So now we are going to we covered the what to be rendered. Now we're going to do how it should be rendered. So as with any other web technologies, CSS is developed and maintained by W3C, which stands for World Wide Web Consortium, which basically is this group of representatives, like throughout the world, that help in creating the CSS standards. So these representatives could be browser vendors like Chrome, Safari, Firefox. It could be other individuals who are interested in web technologies, right? So they all get together and they come to an agreement on what should be involved in CSS, what should be the syntax, how the browsers should render it. So they come up with the standard, and then the browsers across the world, they implement the standards, and then the developers use this CSS syntax to render the web pages. So if you talk to any full stack developers or any web developers, many of them prefer working on JavaScript or backend more than CSS. Many of them are a little bit scared of CSS as well, including yours truly. And why is that, right? First of all, CSS, when you are working with CSS, you have to deal with browser support, which means some browsers might support certain CSS rules or CSS syntax, and some browsers won't. And this is because W3C only comes up with the CSS standards, but it's up to the browsers to actually implement those standards. So if you are, let's say, trying to arrange some of your elements on your web page, they might look good on Chrome, but they might look different on Firefox or Internet Explorer, right? Second, dealing with multiple devices and multiple resolutions can be overwhelming at first. So for example, your website, the way it looks on desktop and the way it looks on mobile are different, and then you want to add CSS so that your website is usable and looks presentable in both the scenarios, right? So adding those CSS, adding those conditions and overriding at the right time, it can be complicated if you do not know what you're doing. And third, since CSS is rule-based language, sometimes you apply some styles, but your element do not render those styles, and then debugging that issue on which style did the element end up rendering can be sometimes painful. So if you ask any developers what it is like using CSS, and I guarantee you maximum of them will send you this, like this would be their experience with the CSS, and including myself. There are times when I handle UI issues, I struggle with CSS, I test it on different devices, I get frustrated and kind of want to throw away my laptop like Peter Griffin did. But CSS also has a lot of potential, and let me show you why. So there's this site called codepen.io. I'm going to link this in the description as well. And here people present their work with web pages. So people might make some designs and add it over here, so that you can look at the designs, you can look at the CSS, the code, and also the result, right? So here I've just searched for CSS only designs. So whatever you see, whatever animations you see are CSS only, right? So let's just look at some of the fun ones. So I just looked at one before recording. So this one was really beautiful, and if you see the animation, it's flawless, right? And believe it or not, it was done by just CSS. So let's look at few more just to get you excited about this. And because this definitely, oh yeah, look at this one. Look at this. It looks like a animation created in like professional software or something, but it is pure CSS. And oh, look, when I clicked on it, it kind of like shows me all the different moving parts of this, and oh, it's amazing, right? And this is pure CSS. If you see on the right side over here, let me zoom in. This is JavaScript. It's empty. You have CSS and you have HTML. That's it. Just HTML and CSS lets you create these amazing animations. So think of the potential you can do, right? Especially if you are into game development, you can create these browser-based games. Ooh, look at this. Look at this. Again, this is just CSS. Look at the shadow and everything, right? So once you understand, once you master this technology, oh, sky is the limit with what you can do on web. So what these animations, that all the examples that we saw, what these animations tell me is that CSS is not scary, but CSS can be fun, right? It can be fun if we know the basics, and that's what we are going to start from. We are going to start with the basics. So let's start with Hello World, right? So I open the VS Code, open like your favorite directory or workspace where you normally code from, create a new file called hello world.html, right? And we are going to use this boilerplate code that VS Code supplies for HTML5, and we are just going to say hello world CSS, okay? And we are going to add, you might have guessed, an anchor tag saying hello world, right? Let's open the live server that we created. So we rendered the page, hello world.html, and it renders a simple hello world, right? So how do we add CSS to it, right? There are three ways to add CSS to your code, right? So first of all is inline CSS, right? So let's do that. Inline CSS. And how do we do that? As the name suggests, to our header tag, we can add a attribute called style, because we are going to add CSS, and we are going to say color, and let's just say blue violet, right? Don't worry about the syntax. We are going to go through the syntax in more details as we go forward, but we are just saying that, hey, add a style to this h1 tag and change the color for this text to hello world, right? And we can add multiple styles to it. So each style value is separated by a semicolon. So you do semicolon, and then you say, let's say background color, right? And say light gray, right? Oops, no, I want to do this shade lighter than this, okay, right? So again, we have the same style attribute, and then in style attribute we gave it two properties. One is the color blue violet, and the background color light gray. And let's see how our page looks. So if you see, oops, If you see this, now the hello world has a new color and it has a background color or attribute as well, right? So this is one way to add styles using the style attribute for the element itself. So to check the second way, what we can do is we can say, let's create another one and say, hello. I said hello, right? Maybe the browser is angry. We didn't respond to hello world, right? And what we can do is in the head section, let me zoom in a bit, right? In the head section, we can add a style tag, right? So again, it's similar to any other HTML element that we had. So there is a style element which starts with this opening bracket, the element name is style, and ends with closing bracket, and then there is a closing tag for the element, right? And in this style we can then say h2, right? We can say color, and let's give it, or let's give it regular red, right? And let's give the same background color. We can just copy this value from here, paste it here. Okay, so now we are saying we are defining the style in the heading section, and what we are doing here, right? So like I said, CSS is a rule-based language. So we are, first of all, we are giving this a selector, right? So we are saying, hey, select this element h2, right? And apply these styles for this element, right? And what are the styles? So first we are saying, okay, change its color to red. So your color means the foreground color, right? Change the color to red, and then change the background color to this combination of RGB. So RGB is red, green, and blue. So we are saying to change this background color to this combination of RGB. So if you click on this, you can also change this. Again, this color selector that pops up, it's IDE feature. It might, if you are using, let's say, text pad to create this, you might not see this. So it's very specific to IDEs. I think most modern IDEs support that. But again, this is not something that's related to the CSS language, right? Now again, open the web page. If you see, hello, I said hello has the red text and gray background throughout. Let me zoom in it a bit, and it has gray background throughout, right? Let's see. So let's talk a little bit about the advantage, disadvantage of all these features, right? So let's talk about the first one, the inline styles. So the advantage here is you know exactly which element you are styling, and you can just add the styles over here, right? Now let's say you did this for a paragraph tag, and then you need to add 10 paragraphs, right? So let's do that. Let's add a paragraph. Oops. And I'll just say this is my paragraph. Okay, and let's just copy the style over here. Let's say attribute style, and oops, I had already copied that. We'll say attribute style, color this, background color, whatever, this, and I need a closing quotes. Okay, looks good. Yes. So normally, let's say we have our web page is a blog post, so we'll have like what, 5 such paragraphs. So all the paragraph has a style. We define inline styles everywhere. Works. But now our manager comes in and say, hey, we want these paragraphs to have a different color, right? So what will you do? You will go through your HTML, you will pick each of these paragraphs, right? And then you will slowly change the color for each of them, right? I'll just change this to, let's say, blue, right? You have to do this everywhere. So the problem with this is, now this is just one web page in your large website, right? Think of a news site where they have so many different web pages, so many different paragraphs, so many different styles, right? How would you maintain this? with 5 one-liner paragraph, it's easy with just changing one style. But if you want to maintain thousands of such paragraphs, hundreds of web pages, it's very difficult to do that on a website, right? So it's not maintainable. So it kind of works like the style elements, but if you want to scale to a bigger website, it's not maintainable that way. Then let's talk about this style, right? So here you defined a selector, you define your styles, it's good, right? So if we translate this example over here, we can do same thing over here, right? We gave color and paragraph to all the P elements, which are the paragraph elements. We can remove the styles from here. I can say remove this. If I can select, I can remove, or you know what I can do is I can just do this for now. 4, 5, because our paragraphs are same, right? Okay, so we removed the styles from here, we just added the style over here. And if someone says, hey, change the color to blue, we just have to change it at one end and it's blue. So it's better than before, it's better than inline styles, but still the problem persists, right? Let's say we add another web page to our website which has paragraph, and we want to maintain consistency across the paragraph. Then again, we have to copy the same styles everywhere, and then when we change it one place, we have to remember and change it to each of our web page. When I say web page, I mean this is hello world.html. We can have another web page and so on, right? So it's still not 100% scalable. And second, whenever you are talking about programming and coding, you want to think about suppression of concerns. Means that you want to keep your web page elements separate, you want to keep your styles separate as much as possible, because there might be time where multiple developers are working on the same web page, and then if someone is fixing the style, someone is adding some elements, you can step on each other's work and maybe add unintended bugs to your code. So in both these scenarios, again, it's not 100% scalable, and it's the suppression of concerns doesn't apply here. Like, we are mixing style and web page, everything together, right? So you might have guessed now, what's the third way to do that? The third way to do that is we create a new file. Let's call it hello world.css, right? And we say, okay, let's put it over here after meta. We link that style sheet to the web page. So we just say link, right? And we say the relationship is that this is a style sheet for this page. And in the href, we basically give the path to that style sheet. So we say hello world.css, right? And now we'll add one more. We'll add h3. And the now browser is angry. He says, this is rude. I said hello twice, right? The browser is like, oh, why are they not responding? I keep saying hello world and the world is not responding. Now we can add our styles over here. So we can say add our selector, right? h3, which selects all the heading 3 elements. And we say color red and background color light gray, right? So what we are doing is, here we linked the style sheet, right? In the style sheet, we are saying that whenever you find a h3 element, this is the selector, right? So whenever we find a h3 element, add these styles to it. So these are the styles. So we say, hey, the color should be red, background color should be light gray. Now if we see our hello world CSS, we see our third h3 where the browser is super angry. He's saying, I said hello twice, right? So this was hello world in CSS. So next, let's look at some developer tools and some useful info while working with CSS, right? So let's start again with the same inline CSS. So if you saw, our CSS syntax was more or less consistent, whether it was inline CSS, whether it was what do we say, internal CSS, or whether it was external CSS. And if you see, for inline CSS, we didn't have a selector because we were directly adding a style on the element itself, but we had the styles here. We can use the same styles in our internal CSS, where we say we give a selector, we give a curly braces, and then we give the styles. So let's say you want to add some comments to it. If you remember, for HTML we added comments like this one to help developers remember and understand why we are doing why we added certain elements or why we added certain styles, right? So how do we do that in CSS? So the syntax for adding comments is slightly different here. So you can do it by / then a star, right? Another star and a / to close the comment. So anything between these two, anything between a / and an asterisk and a asterisk and a / is a comment. So basically by comment what I mean is the browser ignores that part of the code. It doesn't consider that for rendering. The IDE ignores for suggesting the code and things like that. So here I can say example of internal CSS, right? Same way you can use the same commenting style even for your external CSS. So you can add a comment. Oops. Yeah, so / asterisk, then whatever comment you want, asterisk and then / So you can add a multi-line comment, you can push everything to the same line and you can do a single line comment. You can also add comments inside your CSS styles. So like we said, right, we have this selector, curly braces, and then here we can add styles over here. Example of, let's say, oops, foreground color, right? I can say example of background color, right? So you can add more info regarding on why you added that style or what styles are you adding or what are you trying to do with this particular style. Next, let's look at some developer tools that browser provides for CSS. If you remember, for HTML, we used to go to this inspect page and view all the elements that we added over here. So the browser supports similar tool even for CSS. And if you see, once you click on inspect, if you see on the right, you see this styles section over here. So there's styles, there's computed styles, there's layout, event listeners, DOM, properties, accessibilities. But we just want to focus on styles. So let's start again. So if you right click on inspect, and you will see styles over here. So what styles do we see? So it shows the style of the element selected on the left panel. So if you're selected on body, it shows the styles of the body, right? If you select the first one, it shows the style of the h1 tag that we added. So you can hover over h1 tag. You know you are selecting the h1 tag that you see in the browser because it's highlighted. And then on the right, you can see the styles. Now the cool thing about this is it's not that you just see the styles, you can also edit it over here. So let's say the color blue violet is not working for you. So you can click this. Let's say I'll change it to green. I'll change this. I'll click the background color, move around this, change it to black, and there you go. You can also change styles over here, right? And one important thing to remember here is this is not a permanent change. This just allows you to play around with the element styles so that you know how it's working. But if you refresh the page, you lose the style. So it's just something that browser allows you to do on the developer tools so that you'll get more idea on what the styles are, how do you apply it, how would it look if you apply certain styles, right? Otherwise you have to add the style, refresh the page. So it's a good way to practice some of your styles. And if you see the tag over here, the title over here, it says element style, right? It's important to remember this. So whatever styles you apply here, they get applied as inline style for that element. So let's try this. So if you see this paragraph, right? So right now, if you see over here, the element style for this paragraph is empty, because if you remember, for this paragraph, we added styles internally, right? We added in the head tag, right? And if you see, it says that, okay, this one was added in hello world.html and these are the styles for this particular element, right? But it's not the part of the inline style. And next it shows user agent style sheet, What that means is every browser comes up with its own default style sheet. So if you remove these two styles from here, it will render all the elements in the way the browser wants to render. So these are the default style sheets that the browser wants to render. So it's very important to identify that all the styles that you apply to your elements are displayed separately over here, right? So if you add this back, it's over here. Now let's say for the same paragraph, we add an element style in our developer tool. We add color and say red, right? So there are a couple of interesting things to see here, right? So first of all, because we added the element style, it shows over here that, hey, your internal style was defined like this, but it was overridden by the element style, right? So sometimes when you're adding external style sheets, you also might have some internal styles and you might have some element styles. Let's say you had to override it in element in certain cases. Then when you open the developer tools, you can see the way the styles are applied, and then you'll know which part of your style sheet is overriding your styles, right? And it can also be combination. Here if you see, let me zoom in again. Here if you see, the background color is being selected from our internal style, but the foreground color is selected from the element style, right? Again, to confirm that, again, if you look at the HTML elements over here, you see this, it shows that, hey, you added the style attribute to the paragraph element. And since we added to just one paragraph element, if you see, just one of the paragraph element has foreground color red, rest all are blue as expected. Okay, let's look at the element where we use the external style sheet. Let's see how we can see that in the developer tools, right? So if you select H3, right? For H3, we had defined the styles in our CSS file. And if you look at the window on the right, you have H3, you have your styles defined over here. And if you see, it says, hey, this is defined in hello world.css. Okay, let me zoom in again properly. If you see here, it says, hey, it has been defined on hello world.css. Okay, again, it's similar. You have your default browser styles over here in the bottom, right? You have your external styles over here, over that, and finally on the top, you have the element styles. So you must be thinking, right? There are three ways to apply styles. What if we do all three? What happens? Right? Let's see. Let's try that out. So for H3, let's start with paragraph. Okay. So for paragraph, we have, let's add a style here saying, and again, don't worry about all the CSS properties that we are setting here. We are going to cover them as we go further. But let's add a style over here and say red, right? So we said like change the foreground color to red, and also add the same style in the external. So let's say P color, and let's say green, right? So our external style sheet has a green foreground color. Our internal style sheet has a blue foreground color, and our inline style sheet has the red foreground color. So which one do you think applies here? Right? You can pause the video, think about it, write it down in the comments, right? Which one do you think applies here? So let's refresh the page. Let's close this for a while. Let's refresh. And if you see over here, it has the red color, right? So let's again go back to developer tools. So let's see our paragraph. So we have this, it shows we have this inline style over red, and that's got applied over here. And now if you see the right section of this, the style section of this, you'll see the way the browser started was it first applied all the default browser styles, right? Then it applied the hello world.css. So it applied the external styles. Then it applied the internal styles that we applied to the HTML head section. And then finally it applied the inline styles. So when you are applying all the styles, if you add the same style for the same element at all three places, the inline one wins, right? Now let's see if I remove this inline style, what would happen. So let's see if I remove this. Again, can you tell me which color would it apply? I think now you should know looking at the way it was applying styles. So let's again refresh. And if you see, it added the blue color, the heading one, right? So between external and the internal styles, the internal one won. Good joke. The internal styles won, right? So now let's do something interesting, right? Let's do this. So right now the way we have arranged our elements over here is we have our external style sheet and then we have our internal style sheet, right? So since this order, like in HTML we can add elements in any order, I can actually do this. I can move our external style sheet after our internal style sheets. Now can you tell me what color would be the paragraph tag? Again, you can pause the video, think about it, play around with it, and then let me know in the comment section. But let's see, let's go back to this, and ta-da! Everything is in green. So in this case, it ignored the internal style sheet and then it applied the external style sheet, right? So the order in which the browser comes across the styles is the order in which it will apply these styles, right? So with that theory in mind, these inline style sheet are the last resort, right? Inline, after you cannot apply any style sheet after inline, right? So anytime you apply any styles inline, they override any of the styles defined internal or external. Between internal and external, depending on how you define styles, right, the one that is defined later gets applied if there are any contradicting styles. Similarly, let's say I do this. Let's say I create another style sheet saying hello world again.css, right? Let's create a new file. Hello world again. Let's again add a paragraph and let's say color. Let's give it brown. And now if you see, it picked up the brown color. And again, if you see the right section over here, what did the browser do? Right? It started with the browser styles, right? Then it applied then it came across the internal styles in hello world HTML, right? Then it came across hello world.css styles, and then it applied the hello world again.css style. So finally, the color attribute defined in hello world again.css that got applied over here. So we are going to talk more about these concepts like cascading and inheritance in style sheet in upcoming videos. But for now, I really hope this video gave you a good idea on what CSS is and how to add style sheets to your web page. And if it did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me with the video and it really helps me with the channel. In the next video, we are going to talk about CSS selectors, which basically allow us to select HTML elements where we want to add different styles to. So I really hope I'll see you there. Till then, adios, take care and stay safe. Bye.